Welcome to Conversations with Guy. I'm very excited to be here with a very special guest, Michele Ehrhart, bestseller author, and we're going to have a conversation about leadership, transitions, career, reinvention, and all the great things happening in our lives. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you for having me. I'm flattered to be your first guest.
I am so excited about this. I couldn't have a better person to get this podcast started. Let's start with your story. Let's start with the story about you moving into writing the book and what Crisis Compass is about.
So I think you and I come from very similar backgrounds. We spent a lot of time at the same company, this little company called FedEx, where we met a few years back. I don't want to say how many to date myself. But in 2022, I had decided that I was ready for a different path. And a lot of people asked me why I was leaving FedEx after 22 years. And it wasn't one reason. I had little reasons along the way, but I think the most important reason that I ended up transitioning was I was looking to do more purposeful work for myself. During COVID, I think everyone kind of hit the reset button.
Yeah.
And for me, I was looking to do purposeful work. And I remember sitting on a very long 4-hour Zoom call. Do you remember those?
Yes,
oh, yeah.
Very much.
Thinking, what would I do if I didn't do this? What if I started my own company? What would I call it? What would it look? So I had that moment, and then I couldn't unhave that moment. At that point, I started thinking about the possibilities, and it took over.
And then you wrote the book.
Right. So the reason I ended up writing the book, I didn't set out to change careers and write a book. How I got here was thinking about, if I'm selling services to someone, if someone's going to pay me for what I know, what is it that I know that would be of interest to them? And I thought a lot about our time. You think about how much time we spent with executives and learning to be executives, as we both were, and coaching ourselves and others. And I loved that part. But then I started to think about what I did the most of, crisis communications, and how could I articulate that to the public? And I think I boiled it down to, when you're in a crisis, you want someone who's had experience in a crisis. So that's kind of where it started. And I'm like, that's me. But what if you can't find me, or you don't have someone, or you're a small business and you don't even know where to start? And that started scratching my brain on, I want to help someone who got handed that job I got handed. Oh, by the way, here you go. You're going to be the crisis communications manager. What's the book I wish I'd had when I started that I could empower any business leader, from a startup to a CEO, to not be paralyzed in that moment of, oh, the crisis is here, and what do I do?
And going through your book, I just felt like I was being part of it. Because as you said, we have similar backgrounds. And in Latin America, we deal with crises all the time.
Right.
Earthquakes and hurricanes. Actually, we just had one hitting Jamaica pretty bad. And as soon as it started, we had that war room set up. And we all knew exactly what we needed to do. Because as you put on your book, there's a lot of practice that needs to take place, so that when it happens, you're not trying to figure out what you do.
100%.
Right? You need to be ready. And I really connected, including with the way you write. I think the way you write gets to people. It's an easy reading. You enjoy it. You can't stop. So I was really amazed and very into each chapter of the book. It was incredible.
I'm flattered, because it's not a very light subject matter, and I tried to be very direct, and it's kind of just who I am. I think you probably heard my voice because you know me well enough.
All the time.
You were reading it going, nah, I've heard her say that. I tried to make it more of an engaging storytelling than just, here's what you need to do, or another boring business book. Because I think that establishing myself and my credibility in what FedEx taught us, because what a great training ground for us.
Absolutely.
You can't be a company that flies airplanes 365 and drives big vehicles all over the planet and not be well versed in how to handle crises. So we learned from the best.
Yes.
So I wanted it to be one where you could see that I wasn't just talking about theory, that I'd lived it.
Yes.
And I didn't, but I also didn't want it to be all about FedEx, because while it taught me so much, you look around the world and you see so many other examples that it could
Yeah.
be relevant to. And then the minute that I left FedEx, I started getting phone calls from my network when they were in a crisis and saying, yeah, we aren't sure what to do. Would you mind coming? And so then I knew that I had something.
There was a
because
space there.
There was a space for
looking
me.
for what you had to offer.
Exactly right.
That's
And then I
interesting.
ended up going to work for the University of Memphis. So it wasn't that I didn't do anything or sat and did consulting work for the rest of my career, which is kind of what I thought I was going to do. I kind of bumped into this job and have loved it. But if you think about higher education now in the United States, they need my services. Everything, every day is something different, because there's just a really big magnifying glass on higher education right now. So I've been having to put my own book into practice.
Which is incredible. It's incredible. You know, I look at my transition, which was a very friendly transition, and FedEx was very generous to me. I guess just like
Same.
yourself, it was the time. It was the time to do it. And then I found myself with this time, and what do I do with my time? And I started to write. I said, I had so many stories, and people call me and say, you have so much luggage, experience, but where is that experience? It's all here. So let me start putting it down. Let me start putting it down and writing about those experiences, those stories. And I started to really, really enjoy it. And the intellectual production about putting those stories down and turning them into scripts and then putting them into videos and then loading into LinkedIn was like, oh, this is cool. And by the way, I had to learn it because we always had agencies doing things like that for us. So I had to go back and try to learn myself how to edit, how to produce, how to write a script. And of course, they are very basic, and we learn as we get better. But then all those beautiful stories started to come. First, about mentors, because it's all about the people and what we learned with the people and the messages that come from those learnings. And I realized those messages, they can actually help people make corporate decisions and go through situations that I had the chance to go through and learn a little bit about the outcome of my experiences, hoping that would take them, to make better decisions.
So when you were sitting and thinking about your next chapter, what was the story that you went, oh, I have something here? Or was it one story?
I think it was an organic process, because my first intent was I want to put out those stories. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about those great mentors that I had, and I selected 7, and talk about what I learned from those mentors. And it was really organic. They were just coming. And once I was done with the mentors, I was like, I have more stories to tell, not necessarily about the people, but about situations, about things that we deal with in corporate world, such as integration. I talked about regional advertising. I talked about customer experience. And the one about being yourself and being authentic was the one that created the most reactions. And true reactions, like from their heart. And again, the messages that I was receiving, they amazed me. And they were like, okay, not only I have good stories to help people make good business decisions, but for them to feel better about themselves. Mm-hmm. And with that, be better persons, better professionals, more productive, more creative. And it's something that these days, actually, it's even being questioned. If you can continue to be yourself, or if you should go back to the closet, no. Because, at the end,
of course you can be yourself.
There's so many things happening today that kind of, put us in questioning those things again. I say, no, this is the time for me to go out there and say, no, you have to be yourself. You have to be authentic. And you deserve the right, just like everybody else, to the same opportunities.
Well, and I think what I heard you tell me is that it's really about, you're talking about leadership through stories of the people that you've encountered. Exactly. But that's what this is all about. And we are very fortunate. We got to spend a lot of time at a company that invested in us and taught us how to be good leaders. And I think my favorite chapter in my book is chapter 8, because it's talking all about leadership during a crisis and leading with your head and your heart.
Exactly.
That we understand, because we've been in a business environment, how to make those decisions. But you have to have the empathy as a leader. I think that's the differentiator to be a truly good leader. And I imagine your stories are full of people that you've encountered with both of those things.
On all of them. A lot of individual consideration, not only the treating with respect, because that's the minimum that you need to have, but really looking at people and helping them grow. And I think that the most important thing a leader can do is to help people grow professionally. And that's so fulfilling. When you see somebody that you mentor to really grow in their careers, it is something that it really gives me a lot of joy. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, where I was taken. As I was saying, it was organic in the way that the stories were coming out. But as I was seeing that the stories were actually hitting people and they were writing back to me. And I was not writing one of those, those just the quotes that you see a lot, quote, you need to do this, you need to do that. No, I'm not the one to tell you what to do. I can tell you what I did and the outcome and the learnings from it, and hope that you see how to use that to solve your own problems, right? And it started to work.
Maybe you need a book. Maybe you need a book with all your stories in it.
Oh, maybe I'll get there. Maybe I'll get there.
I feel like what you're working on gives us permission to do what you and I did.
Exactly. And I had people also calling me and asking, why are you doing that? Why are you promoting FedEx? But you left the company.
We love FedEx. It's part of who we are.
I have 33 years at FedEx.
Exactly.
It's most of my life. And it's like, first, because it's a time that I can do it. And I'm really enjoying doing it. And then the feedback and the reaction that I'm getting from people just inspired me to just keep doing it. So it was not only about FedEx's stories. Those are my stories inside that FedEx environment. And so, you have you always will have people that will push you forward, but you also have people that will criticize, not necessarily in the most positive way or most constructive ways. Right?
No, and I think what I'm hearing you say, and I felt the same way too, is that you don't have to know all of the answers. We worked in an environment where you put together a plan, you worked the plan, you had the outcome. This is all new territory. It's okay for you to try things out, test things out, see what works, see what doesn't. Yeah. Who knows where it's going to take you, but I think it's exciting that where you're headed.
The first story I told was about Fred Smith, our founder. And one great quote that I took from him that I used in this story was about not letting the fear stopping you from trying something new.
Oh, there would be no FedEx if he had done that.
There would be no FedEx, exactly. And I just took that to heart. I was like, well, I don't know where this is going. It's different. It's myself. But I like it. I'll just keep doing it. Mm-hmm. I'll just keep doing. I have no fear. I have nothing to lose. And it's exciting.
That's right. That's when good things happen.
And I'm having the time of my life.
I can tell. I love that. I think that's wonderful.
And I'm having the time of my life. Michele, main takeaways from the book. And I have a few ones that I even wrote it, because at some point we're going to have more time, because this chat will not stop here.
I hope not.
But what would you say are the main ones?
I think for the book itself, the main takeaway is to plan the work and work the plan. When you are in a crisis, and again, that's defined by the individual, because what might not be a crisis to you and me may feel like one to someone else. That's not the time to get prepared for a crisis. It's too late then. Yes. And there's really a lot of homework that can go into crisis planning, and it doesn't have to be too structured, but you need to be prepared. Mm-hmm. And if you can't avoid the crisis, which is my first advice, try to avoid it, then you have to do no harm. Mm-hmm. So when you're in the midst of a crisis, if you are making irrational decisions, or you are not getting all the facts, or you are maybe talking before you have the information ready to be presented, then you could be harmful in a crisis. And so you don't want to make it worse. Yeah. You want to take that moment to breathe, make a good decision, and then speak.
And at FedEx, I recall, we did a lot of role playing.
A lot of it.
A lot of role playing.
I still
about
do it in
different
my
types
job
of
now.
situations
Absolutely.
that could happen, how we would deal with it, who handles the call, who needs to be on the call, how often you need to have the call, how you manage how the information gets spread out or not.
Or not.
Or not, which is also as important.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I'm curious, what were your takeaways from the book?
Well, as I said, I felt like I was living my own life reading your book, right?
You were part of some of these.
Yes, yeah. I was probably there on some of those because we had some global crises that we all
Right.
had to get together. But you talk about, because we worked at a company that really puts process in the center of the planning, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to lay out what to do before things happen. And the better you plan and the better you train for it, the more prepared you will be to handle it right when it really happens.
Agree. And I call it muscle memory.
Yes.
But I really think you can't be a football player and show up on game day and expect to win the game. You can't be a ballerina and just go and perform without doing the training and the preparation and the conditioning beforehand. Same holds true for a crisis. You have to have thought through some scenarios and the what if game. What would I do if this happened?
Yes.
And if that happened? And then what if that happened? And while it feels daunting, it also can be kind of fun to just see how many crazy, wild scenarios you can come up with and what would you do if that happened, in hopes that it will never happen. But gosh, if it does, then you've thought through that already.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you've already thought about, okay, this is what I need to do first.
Yeah. And you used a very big one.
Yeah, a lot.
Very big crisis
Yeah.
as an example that you really went through the details of what was happening and what was done, which was the case in Indianapolis.
Right. So I used Indianapolis, and that was the Indianapolis workplace shooting that happened during COVID, actually, at an Indianapolis ground facility. Because I felt like it was truly the culmination of all of my training in one situation. And it was a terribly tragic situation. So I think that one levels the playing field in the sense of we're all humans and people lost their lives. People that were our teammates.
Yeah.
And that human side of it, everyone goes, gosh, that was terrible. If it were a product that went bad or something that was specific to a brand that perhaps people didn't care about, I'm not sure it would have resonated quite as much.
Mm-hmm.
But it was that moment where all of my training, all of my skills played out in one space. And then I looked at other large incidents that, we've read about and knew about so that people could have context on how that skill set that I had and the learning that I had showed up in other places, or sometimes didn't show up in other places, and those brands didn't fare as well.
Yeah. The other thing I like a lot about the way you approach it in a book is that it's not a function of communications. Crisis is not just a function of communications. It's a function of brand, it's a function of advertising, it's a function of social media. So you can't be dealing with a crisis here and have happy faces going in social media as if everything was beautiful and shiny, right? Everybody needs to be talking the same language, be on the same tone. If you have to go dark, you go dark, right? Or pull away all of those happy faces, at least during that moment, so that...
Read the room. Just
Read the
understand
room.
what
Yeah.
your circumstances are. And another important thing, and I learned of this very vividly during the Indianapolis crisis, is ask for help or accept the help that people want to give.
Yeah.
Because a crisis truly is an equalizer. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO or you are the frontline worker. You may need help from everyone in between.
Right.
And it's happening to all of us.
Yes.
Not just the leaders of the organization. So there were just some really wonderful things that came from that Indianapolis tragedy that helped the company grow, but also my relationships. I mean, I remember marketing coming to the table and saying, we want to put this on Denny Hamlin's car to bring attention to the victims, or we want to put these black ribbons on every FedEx vehicle. I mean, those were not things that I needed from a crisis communications perspective to ensure that the reputation was being protected, but they were thoughtful, galvanizing gestures that came from marketing that allowed all of our team members and all of the fans of FedEx around the world to say, okay, we're coming together for this.
Yes.
And there were funds that were set up for the victims' families that we'd never done at FedEx in the history of FedEx because we were able to use an outside organization to help us do that. So I just learned a lot about knowing when to ask for help and knowing when to accept help. Yeah. And I think that's a huge leadership lesson in itself.
Yes.
And I did a speech recently on the book where I had to pivot from it just being about crisis and just talk about leading through any change, because this book is relevant for that. It talks about, as a leader of the organization, what the role is. And look, leadership's a choice. We chose that. We raised our hand, Guy, and said, hey, pick me. I want to be a leader. And that's a choice you have to make every single day. And some days that's an easy choice. And some days that's a very difficult choice. But you don't get to just say, yeah, I'm not going to do it today.
Yeah. And depending when you are, you need to pull those together. As you say, some people will offer help, or some people have a very departmentalized mindset where, okay, this is something that they have to deal with. I'll just continue to do my own stuff. But that's when somebody, a leader, needs to pull all of that together, right? And I used to have brand and communication. So it was you must come together on the way that we speak about what's going on. And it's not the time to focus on the brand awareness, it's the time to focus on the brand reputation.
Right. And they go hand in hand, but there are very specific things for each one of those. And I feel very grateful at FedEx because I spent the first half of my career there on brand marketing endeavors. So going out and painting the pretty pictures and showing all the greatness that the brand was, this global, beautiful brand that showed up everywhere. And when I got the role in crisis, I had to see the underbelly of the airplane to see where are the vulnerabilities. And it was the most important role I ever had at FedEx for several reasons. Well, first, it kind of showed me where I'm passionate. I love helping. And I think if you are a crisis communications person who seeks it out, you're a different breed. We're the ones running to the fire when everyone else is running away from it.
Right.
But I learned the vulnerabilities of this big, beautiful brand that we had and why it was so important to make sure that every aspect of the brand was paid attention to, including those vulnerabilities. And that 4 months that I was in the crisis management role was the most pivotal professional opportunity I ever had, because it was a lateral move for me. And I was prior to that, I was doing beautiful I Am FedEx videos. Remember when we had that?
I do.
It was telling all the great stories.
We created it in Latin America.
Yes, you did. And it was so amazing. And everyone wanted to see it because it really humanized our brand.
It did, yeah.
I went from that to trying to keep the press from knowing about the vulnerabilities of things that were happening that we were trying to make better.
Right.
And seeing that flip side broadened my horizons tremendously.
Yeah.
And those 4 months in that role gave me the skill set that allowed me to even be qualified to apply for the director role. I never would have even been able to get through the screening process without it. It changed the trajectory of my career. And Brian Phillips he said a lot of nuggets throughout my years, but he was my first vice president when I came to the company. And he said something in a town hall directly to me. He was addressing the entire room, but it felt like one of those moments where I was like, oh, he's talking to me. Yeah. And he said, sometimes the best way up is sideways. And he meant take a lateral roll if it means you get to learn something new. Yeah. And when I had that opportunity to go into crisis, I took it. I was petrified. I was like, what if I do this wrong? And that I talk about that in the book too. Yeah. There's no doing it wrong if you're doing it with intention, if
Yes.
you're doing it for the betterment of the brand you're supporting, and if you're doing it collaboratively.
Yeah.
Because you're not alone. In a crisis, people want to help.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
show up and stand in line and wait and say, what can I do?
Yeah.
Good leaders put them to work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I heard the same thing from Brian many times, because he actually hired me as a manager.
Well, see,
Yeah.
smart man.
Was my role model, and that idea about taking a lateral that will give you more learnings and prepare you for the next step really resonated. I did pricing, I did communications, I did brand, I did market analysis, I did forecasting. I mean, you name it. I moved to customer experience, then operations, and then customs operations. So
Well, you moved continents for this company. You moved all over. You did all the things. I mean, so yeah, it was, you did as much for them as they did for you, though, Guy.
and that's why sometimes it's hard. Somebody asks me, "What did you do for FedEx?" I'm like, "I don't know. I did so many things. Where do I start?"
I think
But
the
I
better
think-
question is, what didn't you do?
What didn't you do? But it's exactly the combination of all of those experiences that I think gives me the baggage that I have today to tell the stories.
Yes.
To turn those experiences into stories that I believe can help people with their own corporate decisions and their own lives.
Well, and I think a good lesson there for any leader who's listening to us now is what FedEx did for you and me is invested in the people, the person.
Yeah.
I remember not getting a director job, which is what perpetuated the move that they asked me to take from brand building to reputation protection.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get the role because I didn't have a lot of media experience at FedEx. I had some prior to, but you know, if it's not at FedEx, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
So they said, well, you didn't have this person got the role because they had media experience and you don't. And I thought, well, all right, well, then I'm going to leave communications and go back to marketing because I don't have that experience. I'm not going to be able to move up here. And a few weeks later, they came to me and said, we want you to take a role and learn media. Just like they asked you to take roles that you didn't know about,
Yeah.
but they invested in us. And I think really the great companies do that. It's more about the skill set that you have today and more about investing in the leader of tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's the FedEx you and I were part of. And I'm forever grateful.
Yeah.
And I think other companies and other leaders ought to emulate that more.
And you sent me back to a very similar situation that I had, because I was doing brand and communications for a certain amount of years, and then I had an opportunity to interview for a vice president of marketing at that point. But I was in that role for a couple years. And I didn't have the chance to spend time on the analytical side of marketing, even though I started in the analytical side of marketing, but not as a director. And that's when DJ Miller, at the time, he was my vice president, he decided to shift things, and he put me on pricing and product. Imagine, you go from brand communication to
I can imagine.
pricing, product forecasting.
You were asking, do you like me or do you hate me?
No, I actually loved it
I'm
because
sure
that's
you
where I
did.
started. My background was really on the analytical side. So I'm getting back to the numbers. But for everybody else in the organization, they start seeing you differently. You are not just that professional that does that role. And if you only do that also, they will be afraid of taking you out of that role because nobody can do it better. What happens if I take Michele out of crisis communication? Oh my God, everything will fall apart.
Right.
But first, they have to see Michele as much more than that one. And also, there's got to be somebody ready to take your job. So part of our job as a leaders, and as we think about our careers in the next, is to prepare somebody to take over our position.
More
because-
than one. I wanted
more
four
than-
options.
Yeah.
Let's get them all ready.
Yeah. Because if you don't have, that may be a reason for you not to move.
Exactly.
It happens.
Exactly. And I remember having some of those conversations of, who's your successor? Mike Ducker used to ask me that all the
There you
time.
go.
Because he said a couple things, and I actually acknowledge him in the book because he gave me a seat at a table that I did not have the title for, but he knew, I needed to be there, but he needed me at that table. But he taught me you don't get to just get a seat at the table, you have to bring something when you come. And that he had very high expectations, and that people will rise to meet your level of expectation. So those were two big takeaways from him. And he was just such a good people leader, because he wanted to make sure that you were ready for the next thing. But he always asked, what's your succession plan? Because he knows it's easier to move a leader out of a role if there's someone who can take the role.
Exactly.
And I took that with me. I emulate that same quality with the people that I lead now.
Yeah. Have them ready and prepared and empowered.
Right.
Beforehand. Mm-hmm. You have to give those people the opportunity to actually do the role playing, be on your space when you're not there. Give them the authority to start making some decisions. And another interesting and great thing about FedEx is that, and that came from Fred, is not to fear the failure. Because we will fail. We will not be successful all the time. But we will learn from it, stand up, pick up the pieces, move to the next.
It's interesting for us, too, to look at a company that still really had that entrepreneurial spirit in many ways, but they were so large, it was hard to go faster.
Right.
And we all wanted to, but it got big.
Yes.
And it made it a little bit more difficult to move and to go fast.
Probably that was the fun part about being Latin America, because we were small.
That's true, and you had a chance
and out
to
of the
do
radar.
that.
So we could just do things, start and try, and not be afraid of making mistakes, because we're not spending millions and millions of dollars on anything. And we were just many times we were the guinea pigs. Mm-hmm. That worked very well in Latin America. Well, it has a very good opportunity to work somewhere else, in the bigger markets, in Europe, in the US. And we were so connected globally. I mean, my peers in Asia, in Europe, we were so connected. We shared so much that I think it made us also stronger and more daring as
point.
we support each other.
Safety in numbers.
Yes. And we launched the very first global advertising campaign.
I remember.
And it was really about, and there was nobody telling us we're going to do an advertising campaign that's global. It was really about the brand directors getting together and say, hey, why are we spending all this money with productions here, and there? Let's just create one great production that we can all leverage in our markets with one strong message, and then we put our money towards activating that message and making it resonate in the different markets that we have.
So smart.
And it was successful. It was the very first time it happened. And it was so great to be part of that process and seeing it happen, because it's like it is powerful.
Right.
It's really powerful.
The collaboration we had no choice. If we wanted to get things done, we had to be collaborative. All right, so as we've been all over, what advice, I know you don't like to give advice, but what advice would you have to someone who's coming out of a corporate role like we did? Mm-hmm. What advice do you have for them?
I can talk for myself. As I was mentioning to you before, it's the first finding what you really like, who you are, what you enjoy, and then going for it without fear, without the fear. And maybe this is for the time that I'm going through in my life right now, that I am more certain about being able to go through that journey myself. I know sometimes for many people who are starting the careers, it's probably too early, and they're in the process of who I am and where I'm going. But you need to be authentic to yourself, and you can only do that if you really know yourself and you spend your time going through that mental stimulation and giving yourself the right time to find what you really like.
Yeah, I agree.
I guess that's it. And I keep reinforcing the message about being authentic, because for a long time I was not allowed to be authentic, to be myself. For a long time I had to come up with stories of a girlfriend, stories of these, stories of that, just so that people can leave me alone.
I remember. We were all heartbroken. Heartbroken.
But once you get
But also happy for you when you finally could just be who you were.
And what I'm telling people is that the more you do, the easier it gets. Mm-hmm. And to these days, it would give butterflies in my stomach when somebody would ask me, so what about your wife? And I have to go, no, I don't have a wife, I have a husband. But it gets easier. Every time you say it, it gets easier and easier and easier. And the reaction on people changes as well.
Well, and you have a wonderful husband, and the minute they meet him, they get it.
Yeah, they fall in love.
Right.
Eric is a
They
great
get
person.
it. He's wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. Any last questions for me?
Big mistakes about handling crisis that you also touch in the book. What are the...
I think any strength overdone is a weakness. So if you rush out and talk immediately and you say the wrong thing, yes, you've acknowledged that you have a crisis, but you might have made it worse. And on the flip side of that, many people react to crisis by wanting to not say anything. And silence can be deadly if it isn't strategic silence. So you have to acknowledge it, or someone's going to create the narrative for you. It's harder to change a narrative than it is to create your own. And so the more work that you do in advance to be prepared for that, and you're never going to be prepared for every crisis. And I'm not saying you should even try. All I'm saying is have some of the tools that are in this book ready to go, so that if the bad day happens, you don't feel overwhelmed. And if you don't get the book and you don't read it, and I understand that, and you get into a crisis, have thought through who you're going to call, because you're going to need help. And you can always call me.
Yeah.
But I'll be really expensive that day.
Yeah.
I won't be if you go get the book. The book is much cheaper than me.
We hope. Yes. What about you? Any question from you? Anything you want to know?
I want to know what success looks like for you in this chapter of your life.
Success is about how many people I can positively impact with the things that I have to share.
I think you made a big start today.
Yes, I'm excited. I couldn't be in a better place with a better person.
Oh.
And it's really exciting to get started.
I look forward to watching the journey.
Stay with me.
Thanks for having me.
And for you, buy this book. It's incredible. You're going to read it really quick. I didn't, because as I was going through, my head was like, oh, but Hurricane Maria, and then I would go through my own stories. Okay, back to the book, because it's too good. So I kept going, but we will devour it in a day. It's really something it touches, you learn from it, and I'm sure there's a lot of great takeaways, as you said, not only about managing crisis, but it's about leadership. Congratulations, Michele. I'm so proud of you.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for being with us towards the end. It's a great pleasure. As I said, it's the first podcast on the Conversations with Guy, and I'm looking forward for many more. Cheers.